It was a quiet afternoon, and I was deep into a live FBI briefing in my home office, focused and taking notes. Everything was running smoothly until the sound of screeching tires and a loud crash shattered the calm. I jumped out of my chair, heart racing, not knowing what was going on outside. When I rushed to the door, I couldn't believe my eyes. A car had crashed right into the side of my house. But the real shocker, it was none other than the HOA Karen, the very woman I had avoided for months. She had somehow managed to plow into my office while I was in the middle of a top-secret live session. At that moment, everything felt like a nightmare. I had no idea how she even got her car to do that. Was it on purpose? Was she trying to get my attention? And what did this mean for the briefing I was on? As I stood there, stunned, trying to process what just happened, I had to quickly figure out how to handle the situation without compromising the security of the briefing. Would the FBI find out? And what would the HOA Karen do next? Stick around because this is only the beginning. The drama and chaos that followed were even crazier than the crash itself. Stay tuned to find out what happened next. I quickly ran outside, hoping it was some sort of accident and nothing serious. But as soon as I saw her, I knew it wasn't just a simple mistake. There she was, the HOA Karen, standing next to her car, looking entirely unbothered by the damage she just caused. She was already in full-on rant mode, shouting about how my lawn wasn't up to community standards and how my mailbox was unsightly. I tried to wrap my head around it. This woman had literally crashed into my house, and all she could think about was my lawn. In the back of my mind, I knew that the FBI agents I was communicating with weren't aware of what was happening. I couldn't afford to break that focus. I had to get this woman under control, but she wasn't making it easy. She wasn't even acknowledging the gravity of what had just occurred. Instead, she kept complaining about my violations and how the neighborhood was going to have to take action. Meanwhile, my office, which had been the setting for a crucial FBI briefing, was still vulnerable to any unwanted interference. I tried to tell her that I was on a live call, but she just waved it off like it didn't matter. Then, without warning, she turned and started walking toward my front door. My stomach dropped. Did she even know what she was walking into? Was she about to ruin everything I had worked for? The tension in the air thickened as she reached for the door handle. I rushed forward, my heart pounding in my chest as I realized what she was doing. She wasn't just standing by the door, she was heading straight toward it, like she had every right to be there. I had to act fast before things got completely out of hand. I yelled, "Hey, stop right there." But it was too late. The door was already opening, and there she was, stepping into my office like she owned the place. The agents on the call had no idea what was happening, their voices still coming through my speakers, unaware of the growing chaos in my home. I quickly muted the mic, my mind racing. I couldn't let this woman jeopardize everything I'd been working on, but there she was, acting like she didn't have a care in the world. "Excuse me, but you can't just barge in here," I said, trying to sound calm, even though I was losing my grip. She gave me a look, half annoyance, half disdain, and said, "Well, clearly I can, since your property is a mess. I've been telling you about these violations for months." I was shocked. Of all the times she could have caused trouble, it had to be now, when I was in the middle of something that could change everything. My heart was still racing, but I had to keep it together. I glanced at my laptop, praying the agents hadn't heard the commotion. Suddenly, she started rifling through the papers on my desk, as if she were entitled to inspect every corner of my life. "You really need to get your act together," she muttered, completely oblivious to the fact that she was disrupting a sensitive operation. I was running out of options. How was I going to get her out of my office without drawing more attention? The FBI was just a click away from hearing everything, and I couldn't afford to lose their trust now. I took a step toward her, trying to keep my voice steady. "You need to leave, right now," I said, but as I moved closer, she locked eyes with me. For the first time, I saw a flicker of something other than arrogance in her gaze, something that made me hesitate. Was there more to this than I thought? Was she hiding something, or was it all just a big, frustrating coincidence? Before I could respond, she turned and headed toward the window. "Don't think I don't know about your secret meetings," she said, her tone shifting. "I've seen you sneaking around, and I know exactly what you're up to." My stomach dropped. What was she talking about? What did she think she knew? And how was she so confident about it? I needed answers, but every second felt like it was pulling me deeper into a mess I couldn't control. My heart was racing now, the tension so thick I could barely breathe. The fact that she was still in my office was bad enough, but the things she was saying, what did she mean by secret meetings? Was she talking about the FBI briefing? Had she somehow discovered what I was really up to, or was she just making wild accusations? Either way, the situation was spiraling out of control. I watched as she moved closer to the window, her back to me now, as if she were searching for something, her eyes darting around like she was on the lookout for clues. My mind raced. Was she trying to gather information about what was going on inside my house, or was she just trying to intimidate me? I needed her to leave, but the longer she stayed, the more I began to feel like there was something else going on, something bigger than just a neighborly annoyance. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm, but it came out shaky. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to unmute the call, but I hesitated. I couldn't risk it. What if she said something that tipped off the agents? What if she disrupted everything? She slowly turned around, a wicked smile creeping across her face. "You really don't know, do you?" she said, her voice low and almost conspiratorial. "I've been watching you. I know what you're involved in." I froze. My mind went blank, then flooded with paranoia. She couldn't have known. Could she? "You think I don't see the connections?" she continued, now almost taunting me. "You think I didn't notice the strange visitors and the late-night phone calls? The FBI can't protect you forever, you know." My blood ran cold. Was she bluffing? Or had she really figured it out? I could feel my pulse in my ears, the sense of urgency building. I had to get her out of there before things went too far. Every instinct told me to act, but I was paralyzed. Too many questions, too many unknowns. Was she working with someone? Was this part of some larger scheme? Then just as I was about to make a move, her phone rang, cutting through the tension like a knife. She glanced at the screen, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. She didn't answer it immediately. Instead, she stared at the phone, her fingers hovering over the screen. Something shifted in the air. It was as if the entire room held its breath, waiting for her next move. And that's when I realized, whatever she was involved in, whatever her game was, it was far from over. This was just the beginning. She finally answered the phone, but instead of talking, she just listened. Her face went pale as she held the device to her ear, her eyes narrowing. My heart skipped a beat. Something had changed. Whatever was happening on the other end of that call wasn't good. She looked at me, a new sense of urgency creeping into her expression. "I have to go," she said, her voice sharp, almost fearful. "This isn't over." Before I could respond, she turned and bolted out of the office, slamming the door behind her. I stood frozen for a moment, trying to make sense of what had just happened. What was she involved in? Why had she suddenly panicked? I rushed to the window, my eyes scanning the driveway for any sign of her. She was gone. Her car was no longer there. Had she been bluffing the whole time, or was this part of something bigger? My gut told me this was just the beginning, and whatever came next was going to be far worse. I barely had time to process the events when my phone buzzed, the familiar tone cutting through the silence of the office. It was an alert from the FBI team. They'd unmuted the call and were back on the line. I quickly answered, but instead of the usual voices, the line was filled with static. Then a deep voice came through, distorted but unmistakable. "Don't trust anyone, not even her," the voice warned. "You're in danger." I froze. Who was that? Was this the FBI, or had someone hacked into the call? My mind raced as I frantically tried to connect the dots. Had the HOA Karen been involved in something much darker than I thought? Who could be trying to warn me, and why? The tension in the room was unbearable. My phone buzzed again, this time with an unknown number. I hesitated. Was this another warning? Or had someone been monitoring everything I'd been doing? If the FBI wasn't who they seemed, then who could I trust? I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. I had no choice but to answer. What I heard next would change everything, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. I took a deep breath and answered the unknown number, my fingers trembling. The voice on the other end was cold, calculated, and eerily calm. "You don't know who you're dealing with," the voice said. My blood ran cold. The phone felt heavier in my hand, as if the weight of the words had sunk into my chest. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, but the line went dead. No explanation. No further words of warning. Just a click, followed by silence. My mind was spinning. The FBI agents had been silent throughout the whole ordeal, but now it was clear they knew something I didn't. I glanced at my laptop, the briefing still open, and saw the flicker of a new notification. A message popped up, "Don't trust the woman. She's been compromised." I sat back in my chair, trying to make sense of it all. The HOA Karen, the strange phone calls, the cryptic warning. Was I the one being watched all along? Or was she part of something much bigger? And what about the FBI? Who was playing who in this twisted web? Then, just as I was about to process the latest shock, I heard a noise from the hallway. A knock on the door, sharp and urgent. I froze. No one should be here. The woman had left. There was no reason for anyone to show up now. I slowly walked to the door and peered through the peephole. My heart skipped a beat when I saw the unmistakable figure standing outside. It was the HOA Karen, but she wasn't alone. She was flanked by two men in dark suits. The kind of men you didn't ask questions about. They had that look, the kind of people you'd only encounter in movies, the kind that made your stomach churn with unease. I opened the door just a crack, trying to keep my composure. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper, trying not to let them see the panic creeping into my expression. One of the men stepped forward, his face emotionless. "We need to talk," he said. "And this time, there's no escaping the truth. You've been tangled in this mess long enough." I felt the world tilt beneath me. This was the moment I had been waiting for, but the truth was far more chilling than I had ever expected. The woman I had spent so much time trying to figure out. She wasn't just a Karen from the HOA. She was a key player in a much larger operation, and I had unknowingly walked right into the center of it. The two men pushed past me, and I stepped back, trying to process everything. They weren't here to argue about lawns or mailboxes. They weren't here for petty neighborhood squabbles. They were here because I had just become a part of something that went far beyond anything I could have imagined. As the door closed behind them, I realized with a sinking feeling that this was only the beginning. The game had changed, and I was no longer just a witness. I was a player in a much more dangerous game than I had ever bargained for. The FBI, the strange warnings, and the cryptic messages were only pieces of the puzzle, and I had just been handed the missing key. But just as quickly as they arrived, the men in the HOA Karen were gone, leaving me with more questions than answers, and the unsettling feeling that I might never be able to leave this chaos behind. The door clicked shut behind them, and for a moment, I stood there, trying to process what had just happened. The weight of it all was overwhelming. The HOA Karen, once just a nuisance, was now at the center of something much darker. And I somehow had gotten tangled up in it. The men in suits had left without a word, leaving me standing in the same office where just hours ago I'd been conducting a routine FBI briefing. It wasn't until later that night when I received another call from an unknown number. This time, it was the real FBI agents, alive and well. They confirmed what I'd feared. The HOA Karen had been working as an informant for a criminal syndicate, and I had inadvertently become a part of their plans. My so-called briefing was actually a covered operation to track her movements, and my home office had become ground zero. The entire situation was more complicated than I could have imagined. But the silver lining, I wasn't in danger anymore. The agents had already apprehended the syndicate members, and the Karen was under surveillance. As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but reflect on the bizarre chain of events that had led me here. What started as a routine day had turned into a wild ride filled with threats, confusion, and unexpected twists. It was a reminder that sometimes the most ordinary of days can turn into something extraordinary. The next morning, I stared at my desk, still in disbelief. The FBI had gone silent on the matter, but I knew one thing for sure: my life would never be the same. The world I'd once known was full of secrets I never even knew existed, and now I was part of that hidden world. And while I didn't know where things would go from here, I knew one thing: the story wasn't over. It was just beginning.